Welcome to the podcast from HeadHunters Northwest. HeadHunters Northwest. Specialized recruiting, specialized approach, where we take you behind the scenes into our customers' businesses. For over 20 years, HeadHunters Northwest has served the global defense, small arms, and shooting sectors worldwide. Listen in as we discuss the inner workings of our USA and international customers. HeadHunters Northwest, finding you the best heads for business.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another podcast with HeadHunters Northwest. I am excited to introduce you to Clay Cheshire through this podcast. Clay and I met, I don't even know how many years ago. It's got to have been 10 at least or more on the SHOT Show floor. And we have kept in touch off and on through the years. And I've always said there's got to be a way we can work together. And Clay is general counsel, and he has opened up his own company. He's been doing this in the firearms industry for many, many years. So welcome, Clay, and please tell people about you and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background. And then I want to jump into your defense industry general counsel work, because so many of our listeners and companies can use your experience. So welcome.
Well, thank you, Shaylene. I'm really excited about having this conversation with you. And before I talk about me, let me thank you for on a couple in a couple different ways. One, you do so much for this industry, and your involvement with NSSF, which is an organization that I first got exposed to 25 years ago. You know, they do so much to bring us together when we need to be brought together and to educate us. And you're a big supporter those guys, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate what you do to bring the industry up. You match good people with good companies, and that helps all of us. So thank you for that, and thanks for making time to talk with me. I'm an attorney, and my practice is exclusively focused on the world that you and I occupy.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm 51 years old. I'm married. I've got 2 young daughters. I love what I do because I think it's important. For what we do is important. What I do is important. I think it's impactful. I'm trying to make the world a better place for my girls. It's that simple.
Yeah, it is, and it's great. These are great people in our industry. So
they are.
Lucky us and lucky you that you chose this industry. So can you tell us a little bit about the defense industry general counsel business? Tell me about that, your company and what you're looking for and who you work with.
Yeah, so I'll be practicing 25 years in October, and we'll talk a little bit about how I got to this point. But you know, my practice is, the name of the firm is Defense Industry General Counsel, which is really intended to be descriptive, and really what it means more than anything is that a lot of companies have in-house counsel, and that's their general counsel. They have somebody they go to anytime there's a legal issue to sort of be the gatekeeper and the point guard. But a lot of companies don't have that in-house. And so they have outside counsel that they go to when they have legal needs. And general counsel is someone who can be that point guard outside of your organization. And my practice it's really simple. My clients are all in the defense industry, whether you're talking about personal security all the way up to national security.
Yeah. And you also, so when people say defense, I think some people don't realize that covers a lot of areas. Right. So you're also involved with the small arms, with firearms and ammunition.
Yes.
And also the government side. So really commercial, anything.
Yeah. Federal,
state, anything at all. How do those worlds all differ from a legal standpoint? Meaning, that's a lot to encompass. Is there a way you can kind of slim that down, or say there's a niche area that we see a real need here?
Well, yeah, sure. And so a lot of it, right, is these are some of the most highly regulated businesses in the country. And
yeah.
if you're talking about like what I'll call a mom and pop retail gun shop, all the way up to a company that makes a software that our military uses to, conduct campaigns. They're all going to be regulated by the federal government. primarily. And so a lot of what we do is regulatory in nature. And, the common regulators are going to be ATF, at least with the firearms side. And then as you get up into the sort of what I would call like the warfighter technologies, you're talking about the State Department, sometimes ATF, sometimes the FAA. And so a lot of it has a very regulatory flavor. But, I think and we can talk more about this in a little bit, but I think the regulatory piece of it is the part that is maybe adds the most value to a lot of our clients because, it comes from a lot of different sources. And, I think it helps to have someone who's been through the nuances over the years and can spot the issues in advance.
Yeah. When your customers, they're not just, and this is, not something we talked about ahead of time, but your customers are not just manufacturers. They can be retailers, like you said, the mom and pop, but I didn't realize they could even be the software companies because that's a huge niche that we have, that there's all sorts of regulatory issues there. So it's not limited to manufacturing or retail or anything like that. There's also all this whole section of software that's got to be a part of this.
Right. Yeah. And so like, there may be two different types of software, right? You may have a software that an ATF regulated entity needs for compliance.
Mm-hmm.
And while that software company itself is not ATF regulated, the product it produces is for customers that are. And so you can help the software providers write code, not physically write the code, but you can help provide them the support to make sure that their software provides the services that they need to provide. And then when you're talking about the defense industry per se, right, you're talking about technologies that may drive a drone that is being deployed on a battlefield. So that technology is going to be controlled and actually regulated itself, whereas like the software for the mom and pop retailer is not going to be regulated by ATF. But you need to understand that stuff in order to help them.
That makes sense. Okay, I know I've added more stuff on our list. Sorry. Let's talk about what makes client attorney relationship actually work. In your experience, can you kind of share with our audience what separates a healthy, productive relationship from one that breaks down? Because I don't think people just inherently get exposed to that simple question often enough.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to communication, right? You have to communicate in a way where everyone's on the same page, where the client's expectations about what the process is going to look like, that becomes their experience, right? So in other words, do what you say you're going to do. So if I start working with a new client and we have some early conversations about what they need and what the process might look like, then the process needs to look like that, right? And we have to communicate. I think a lot of the problems in the world, not just the attorney-client relationship, but in the world, come down to communication. And so you have to communicate frequently enough to make sure that everybody's comfortable with what we're doing and where we're going.
Do you have any sort of special rules or anything that you explain to them or why you hold yourself to that type of a standard?
Well, I think there are a couple of things from my perspective, right? Like we're juggling a lot of different projects at any one time, which is the same thing that our clients are doing. And my rule generally, and this is what I sort of train everybody to think this way, is that we have to communicate with our clients frequently enough that they never ask us for an update, right? If a client emails me, and if a client emails or calls me and says, "What's going on with X?" then I've not done a good job of communicating with my client. So that's kind of our rule and how we operate. And I think the other piece of that too is that I think it really helps. How do I say this? I want our clients to want to talk to us.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want them to say, "I don't want to talk to my lawyer. It's going to bring me down. It's going to cause me stress."
Right.
I want them to enjoy the conversations. I want them to talk to us. I want them to talk to us frequently enough that we can add some value.
I think that's something that maybe attorneys that are evolving are getting better at, because I don't think that's how that general feel was many years ago. Kind of like, let me use veterinarians, for example. You take your animal in, you do your thing, right? But now, like if you go to the Colorado State University veterinary school, I only know this because I took a dog there. They actually have classes on empathy and how to communicate with their customers. And I think that that is really important in any service industry. And I think that's really important. And to know that you're aware of that is exceptional, because I think as a customer, you're right. It is, I think people are under this idea like dentistry, back in the day in my age group, everyone was afraid to go to the dentist. And now dentistry's evolved and people don't feel that way anymore because they've worked really hard to change that image. And I think attorneys that are willing to communicate with their customers and be empathetic and really help them, I think is really unique in the firearms and ammunition space. I think that's unusual.
Yeah, and I think that, what it gets down to is, I think that most attorney-client relationships, you and I have talked about this before, they're transactional in nature. What I mean by that is, and this is for big sophisticated clients and family business clients, they say, okay, I'm going to call my attorney or find an attorney when I have a specific need, right?
Yes.
And that's the only reason I'm going to call that person. The only reason I'm going to communicate with that person. And, we work really hard to not have transactional relationships. I think that that we can add a lot of value in conversations that are not purely legal. And unless you have this sort of ongoing non-transactional relationship, you're not going to have those conversations. So it's an opportunity that's missed.
Yeah, very much like your relationship with your CPA. If you only talk to them during tax season, you're missing out. I think so true, but I wouldn't have thought of it. And I do think you do that. You're very strategic. Let's look at the big picture. Let's not just look at what this issue is. How can we improve all of this? What's our long-term planning? I think being proactive versus reactive is probably more critical with your attorney than anything else.
You're exactly right. I mean, a situation is, and I mean, this has happened countless times. If you react to a situation, the cost and the stress are exponentially worse.
Yeah.
If you anticipate a situation and you are proactive about managing it in advance, it doesn't disrupt anything. You can stay focused on making money.
Yeah. Let's say you have a client that calls you and says, okay, we're thinking about X doing this. What do you think? What kind of scenarios would that produce? What have you seen business owners that if they would have done that first and talked to their attorney, would have been better? What doesn't work? Can you kind of run us through some of those examples of that strategic planning?
Yeah, and these are the conversations that I think a lot of clients don't have with their outside counsel, but they should, right? And sometimes, whatever my perspective is that I give the client, they may not follow that, right? They may end up going in a different direction. But an example would be, a client will come to us and say, we're thinking about producing and selling a certain type of product. Let's say this is in the consumer firearms world.
Mm-hmm.
It's perfectly legal for them to produce and sell that product. But that product has gotten a lot of negative attention, perhaps with state legislatures, even potentially with ATF, but again, it's legal to do it. So there can be a conversation about, should we produce and sell this product? What are the upsides and what are the downsides? You may be able to drive some significant revenue by doing it, but long term, is that revenue outweighed by the harms that you may invite, right? Because you may have increased scrutiny and you may end up being targeted at some point. And I've seen that happen. I've seen clients who've come to me and said, should we do this? And I've told them upsides, downsides, and they've chosen to do it. And sure enough, it's caused problems. So that's one example. I think another example that a lot of people don't think about is retirement.
Mm.
How many? I mean, a lot of companies in the firearms world, for example, they're family businesses, and
Yeah.
they may be generational, and things are going well, but there's not an exit strategy, right? And they don't think to talk to their attorney about that, but there actually are some things you can do 24 months, 12 months before you start executing on your strategy that can increase the value of your business so that when you do exit, you end up with a better result.
And that would include handing it down to your kids.
Absolutely.
I mean, almost more importantly in some ways, right?
That's
Because
right.
then you can structure that correctly and keep heartache out of that, because heartache is probably very high possibility with those second and third generational businesses.
Yes. And another thing you can do, there may be some risk that you can identify and manage that will benefit your family for the long run, right? I mean, you want to protect, you've built this company, you want to protect that asset. You want your children to be able to benefit from it, your grandchildren to be able to benefit from it. So there are some things you can do organizationally from a regulatory and transactional perspective that can protect that asset for the long term. So there are things, but again, a lot of clients don't think to talk to they may say, Clay's my ATF lawyer or my ITAR lawyer, right?
Yeah.
They don't think to talk to me about that, but I want them to.
Yeah.
And I encourage
more well-rounded. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I wouldn't want more attorneys. I'd rather have mine just do all of it.
I think that, and a lot of people have, 8 different law firms they're dealing with at any one time. And I do. I agree with you. I mean, the fewer firms you're dealing with, I think it's better. And you've got somebody who has like a cohesive or more thorough understanding of your business and the personalities that run that business.
Yeah. No, you're right about that. You've seen kind of going on to I want to talk about new products and new markets. You've seen clients navigate these areas, mergers, joint ventures. There's a lot of buying and selling going on right now. International relationships. I mean, all you have to do is look at the wires. We can all talk about the international relationships that, are causing some discussion opportunities, shall we say. What's the most common mistake companies make by waiting too long to bring legal counsel into conversation? Because all of those could be happening at once, or there could just be one or more.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And I think the biggest challenge we run into is that, if they don't involve the attorney early enough in the conversation, then, they will agree to terms, right? Or agree to a strategy that may not be the best one. And I think can be challenging to change your mind, change the strategy, change the terms of a deal once you've already agreed to them. And a lot of times when you're dealing with an international party, there's cultural differences and sometimes, sort of changing the deal after you've reached an agreement can destroy it. So I think involving your attorney early in the process, again, it goes back to that whole communication concept, right?
Yeah.
You want to have this kind of relationship where, I mean, you're not a member of the board of directors, you're not an officer of the company, but you almost want to be perceived that way, right? Because when you're making a business decision, that's who you're going to go and talk to. You're going to talk to your board. You're going to talk to your officers.
Yeah.
Talk to your counsel too, because we can add some value, in advance.
Yeah. No, I think I can see that. Let's talk about the future of the firearms industry. What do you think the challenges are facing the firearms industry in the next couple of years from your perspective?
Well, I mean, look, it's the same stuff the same kind of challenge in the firearms industry that we've been dealing with for the entire time I've been doing this, which is it's a very politically sensitive industry. And there are organizations whose entire lives are dedicated to harming it. And they're their goals have been consistent as long as I've been doing this, and but their methods change. And so I think, probably the thing that I see coming and other people see coming too is you're seeing this massive increase in state regulation and state laws that cause disruption to the industry. We see it in a lot of times you saw it in the same states early on, but now you're starting to see it kind of creep out to other states. And it just creates a lot of uncertainty in terms of what can we do, what can we sell, what can we produce, and it creates risk.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the state and local, 20 years ago, Larry Keiner and NSSF worked really hard to spearhead the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act. And that's been a great victory. And it's done, created a tremendous amount of value to us. But that statute's been litigated for 20 years. And, people have pounded out exceptions, and legislatures have figured out ways to work around that and to create exposure for the industry. So I think that's the next, I hate to battleground for the industry is going to be state regulations, state laws.
So if legislation and risk is growing, not just in volume, but also complexity, then what's driving that, and how is it going to be different from litigation environment even 5 years ago? Because just from my perspective, which is not even close to what you're dealing with, it just seems to be more and more complicated and complex. But what is it, if that is true, what is driving that?
Well, I think what's driving it is I'll just use the word, the gun control groups, they hate guns and they want us to not have them. And that's their only purpose. And, they work all the time to figure out ways to accomplish those objectives. And again, what's changed is just their methods. And what they're trying to do, Shaylene, is they want people to throw their hands up and say, I'm just not going to sell in California anymore.
Right.
That's what they want.
And then want to the next state, I suppose.
Yeah. And then what they do, what a lot of people don't realize kind of how the sausage is made, whether it's firearms related or whether it's telecom or whether it's something completely different, the statutes that legislatures adopt are often written by third-party groups that are not themselves legislators. So you'll see the gun control groups will draft, right, the same proposed legislation over and over again, and they will get it adopted in friendly states, and it gets tested and it gets litigated. And when they find something that's effective, they do it again and again and again. And what they're trying to do is to, again, get people to stop selling in a certain state. They're also trying to create risk for investors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Trying to create risk for lenders and trying to discourage investment in the industry, to discourage capitalization of the industry by creating uncertainty and risk. And so
it's not as simple as you just can't buy a gun here. It's so much more complex than that.
It's death by 1,000 cuts.
Mm-hmm.
That's the
do you mind talking about you referenced a recent decision around insurance coverage being excluded for alleged intentional acts. Do you think you could break that down for me and our listeners? And what does that mean to manufacturers and dealers who think they're protected? I'm not sure that's a pretty big mouthful for me.
Yeah, no. And insurance coverage is like, it'll make your eyes go crossed, right? It's not the most exciting subject, but insurance coverage is, the best way to analogize it is it's a piece of pie, right? You buy a piece of pie from, whoever your insurance carrier is. And that pie provides you, and what it's designed to do is to provide you two things: defense costs, okay, if you get sued,
Mhm.
and then indemnification if you ultimately are found liable for something, whether it's at trial or whether it's via settlement. So you have your defense and indemnity obligations. And the way insurance policies are contracts. There's a contract that says, hey, we're going to provide you with defense and indemnity to cover these scenarios. But then it has exceptions and
Mhm.
exclusions. And so they cut a piece of pie out and they remove it. And so a lot of times, just generally speaking, I mean, the way insurance work is it covers accidents, right?
Mhm.
It generally doesn't cover things that are caused by intentional acts or deliberate acts. And so what happened in that decision, and it was it was a federal Second Circuit Court of Appeals decision that came down in December. There was a shooting in Buffalo. And one of the defendants in that case, and it's the grocery store shooting, one of the defendants in that case, its insurance carrier filed what's called a declaratory judgment action in court, asking the court to declare that it did not owe a defense and indemnity to this particular company. And it said under its language of the policy, it did not have to cover intentional or deliberate acts. And the complaint in the lawsuit was drafted in a way to allege that this company had engaged in intentional and deliberate behavior. And so the court agreed with the insurance carrier and said, look, you don't have to provide a defense or indemnification to this company in this lawsuit. And so the company had no coverage in that case and had to pay out of pocket. And I think ultimately it paid out of pocket to resolve the case by settlement. But that was a hard cost to the company that is disruptive.
Yeah. It's wow. It is really complex, all of this. This is not intended to be something for your typical business owner to reason through on their own.
No. And you have to kind of keep in mind that so what's different, right? We talked about this being a politically sensitive industry. I mean, what's different is in your typical lawsuit, the plaintiff wants money, period.
Right.
That's the outcome the plaintiff seeks. That's what the plaintiff is trying to get. In these political cases, the plaintiff is not trying to get money. The plaintiff is trying to cause harm. And so they're perfectly happy if they bankrupt a company or if they cost a company a whole bunch of money.
Right.
That makes them happy. And so most cases, it's really interesting. Like if you're a plaintiff's attorney and you're suing someone for money, you draft your complaint in a way where you draft your complaint to ensure there is coverage, right? So your allegations are accident. You want the money. But these political cases are drafted in a way to trigger no coverage, which then causes maximum harm to the target, right? So I think you'll see this trend increase in litigation that comes from public shootings because people will draft their complaints to avoid coverage, just like happened in this case.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very complex. In closing, for a firearms or defense business owner listening today that is just, wow, where do I even start? Because, I mean, in a very short time, we've talked about a lot of things. And let's say they don't have, strong legal relationships in place. What's the one thing you'd want them to take away from this conversation?
I would say try to look at your attorney not as a cost, right? But as a valuable member of your decision-making team.
Yeah.
Because I think that if you can change your perspective to think of your attorney, your general counsel attorney as that, then it's going to save you money. It's going to save you stress, and it's going to protect your business from disruption.
That's great. Good advice. Very good advice. Where can people find you, Clay? Because there's going to be people who listen to this that say, I need to reach this person and I need defense industry general counsel. Where can they find you? We're going to put some links. Whoever's listening, if you're driving or not near your computer, there'll be some links attached to the social media posts and also on our website. But you tell the folks what your website is, Clay, and the best way to reach you.
Yeah, well, so thanks for that, Shaylene. I mean, we have a website. It's defenseindustrygc.com. And you can get me by email anytime, clay@defenseindustrygc.com, or my cell. And I'm happy for people to call me on my cell. I may not answer.
Yeah.
It may take them a little while. It may take me a little while to call them back, but
they can find you on LinkedIn as well, because I know I got a link from you for LinkedIn.
Yes.
That's a good way to reach you.
I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. We have a Facebook page, pretty active personally on LinkedIn. Need to do a little bit better job of being active with the company page. But I think LinkedIn is great. And Facebook, don't have Instagram, need to get it. On Twitter, personally, it's not business Twitter. It's me expressing my personal opinions about what's going on in the world.
That's like the most interesting one of all.
I don't know. It might depend on your perspective. But yeah, no, easy to find. And I'm happy for people to call me on my cell phone. It's never a problem. And, I am grateful to be able to do what I do for as long as I can do it. And, again, I think that I have a lot of conversations with people all the time about, what are we going to do? How do we collectively get through the next 10, 15 years in this country as a member of the firearms industry specifically?
Yeah.
And I enjoy talking to people about this stuff, and I enjoy helping. And, it's funny, I got into this, I got into doing this as an associate. I got hired to carry a briefcase for the guy who was trial counsel for Taurus. And we did all their product liability cases all over the country. And that was a great experience, but I didn't have any background with firearms law.
Mm-hmm.
But I got exposed to it. And then for several years had a little bit broader practice than just firearms. But I had a client about 15 years ago, and we had a meeting with ATF. And the day before the meeting, I sat down with the client and prepped him for what was coming and what to expect and how to handle it. And we go and meet with ATF the next day. And what they said to him in the meeting was basically verbatim what I had told him. And I literally sat back in my chair and thought, I need to do as much of this as I possibly can because I think I can help people.
Yeah.
And ever since then, this is all I've done. So,
well, you do what you're passionate about, right? You love it. And this is amazing industry. I say this I think on every podcast because I believe it. This is an amazing career because these people become, your friends. You're invested. You're all passionate about the same freedoms and the same products. And it's, American manufacturing or American software or even international. It doesn't matter. We're all blended together at this point, and we are all about these products.
That's right. And listen, I think America is the greatest country in the world, and I think the people are the greatest people on the planet, and we get to work with them. And these are important issues. These are important issues for my kids, and hopefully one day my grandkids. I mean, these issues that we work on for clients in this industry are important. And so I'm just grateful I'm grateful that people trust me to help them with this.
I think it's an industry that you can see your mark right away. It's an industry and a issue worth fighting for, and you can see the impact right away. Whereas some other industries, it may be more intangible, not in this industry. It's very tangible.
Yeah, it is. And it's a small industry. I mean, it's a really, I talk to people all the time because we do some excise tax work, and the regulator that administers excise tax for the federal government is the same one that administers it for the alcohol industry. And the alcohol industry is so much bigger than the firearms industry. So we operate in a really small world, and everybody knows everybody, and we're like a family. And when
Yeah.
we need to come together, we have. And I
Yeah.
think that time's coming again really soon.
I agree. I agree. Well, thank you, Clay, for being on the podcast. This is a dream realized that we've talked about for a long time. So thank you for making that happen today. I know our listeners are going to be very interested in what you shared. And if anyone can't remember how to get a hold of Clay, you can always call me and I'll put you in touch with him. But thank you, Clay, for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Shaylene. I always like talking to you. Can't wait to do it again.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, that's a wrap for HeadHunters Northwest podcast. Looking forward to our next one. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the HeadHunters Northwest podcast. Specialized recruiting, specialized approach. You can reach out at headhuntersnw.com or call 605-600-1709. Join us again next week as we look behind the curtain into the global defense, small arms, and shooting sectors. HeadHunters Northwest, finding you the best heads for business.